Welcome to AVoice for Creators. I'm your host, Daniel Norton. Today I've been reading a lot of books lately. I'm going to talk about a new book I'm reading in a second, but I was reading a book the other day, probably over the course of November, December, and I wrote down this quote and I don't know where I got it from. So if somebody does know where it came from, please let me know. Maybe I mentioned it before and I just don't remember. But it said, if things go as you plan, then they can never exceed your expectations. And I thought this was a really good insight, and I just want to talk a little bit about it, kind of about myself, as I always do, and about, how this affects us as creators. And, one of the things that we look at, because I have been looking at more and more of what I call business philosophy books. And again, I've just started reading another one. Actually, I'll mention it now so I don't forget. There's this book here I just started reading called Fanocracy. I'll put a link to it down in the description. It's really cool. And I picked up in the bookstore and I was looking through it. This is how I look for books. And I kind of flip and, they usually have bolded things. And I saw this. The relationships we build with our customers are more important than the products and services that we sell to them. And I thought, this book is on my wavelength. So I'll let you know what I think of it as I continue reading it. But Fanocracy, I'll put it in the show notes. If you have read it, let me know. In any case, back to this. And I thought to myself, this is one of those situations where we need to plan. When you pick up business books, like I remember when I first started my business, my entrepreneurship, in the late 90s, and I was reading books on it, and it would say 5-year plan, 2-year plan, do this, do this, do this. And now I notice that more and more the philosophy of business and of moving forward as far as like in the world, like as a creator, when I say business, I'm talking even about if you just create images and you just want more people to see them, you're effectively distributing something, right? So I think the philosophies have changed. The being fast on your feet and adapting seems to be the strategy most people are taking. And I found throughout my life that this has been a good strategy. Even when I think about earlier in my life, when I was younger, much younger, I wanted to be a writer. I really thought that I would write, and there might be some information on that coming up later this year. It's really something I was super interested in. But my brother took a course in what was actually like a graphic design course, and they did some photography in it. And it inspired me to get into photography. If I had just said, well, this is what I'm doing. I mean, obviously you don't make your life plans at 12, but I would have never have gone the direction I did. That being said, I did stick to the photography for a long time, and I held my guns, and I did it because I knew it was in me. It's what I wanted to do. Well, I knew I wanted to be a creator, right? And the photography was my means of expressing it. But when I stepped out into the world, one thing I did was I did not just work for, fashion photographers, since that's what I wanted to do. I let the world guide me. I worked for product photographers. I worked for advertising photographers. I worked for all kinds of people and did all kinds of work because I felt like you never know where an opportunity is going to come from. And because of that, it made me much more versed in various types of photography. There are people that are just full on experts that can do their thing so good. But if you hand them a piece of gear or a type of shoot outside their range, they can't do it, with any skill. And I'm not like that. I'm very versatile, even though I would say I'm not a generalist. I'm still a portrait photographer, but I'm capable of doing many things because I let life lead me where it wanted to go. And those jobs that I did, those connections I made exceeded my expectations. And even beyond that, when I came to New York and I was doing other things, it was, it's funny to say, I was on a path. Maybe I've told the story before, but I knew a guy. That's another podcast. And I was in Adorama looking to buy something from the used department, and they actually saw me. And that's when they were like, we need a expert in lighting to spearhead this new pro kind of lighting thing that we're doing. And, again, if I had been like, well, no, my plan is to shoot for magazines, I'm continuing this catalog work, I'm doing whatever, I would have never done it, right? And when Annie Kale said to me, hey, we need somebody to get in front of a camera and teach photography on, in front of the lens as opposed to be behind it, I was, at first I was like, no, that would have never led me to this direction. So I think that hiccups, whether they be positive, as in like you find a new opportunity and you take it, or negative as in you don't get the positions or the things you want, can really help push us in different directions. One thing that really got me going. Like here I am doing the podcast, which I really like. And I would have never done it if it hadn't been for just various things that were happening. And I was here and I had time at home and I really enjoyed it. Interestingly enough, I have another podcast, and I think I've probably mentioned this before. I'll put a link, and where I do gaming stuff. And I fell into that because my friend had a podcast and I was calling his podcast so much. He was like, why don't you just do a podcast? And again, I didn't plan on doing a podcast. I had no intention of doing a podcast. I think that's the lesson to be learned here. Not just go with the flow, but have a plan, but make that plan be a little bit more general. Set maybe shorter goals. That way you don't lock yourself in. Be open to change and look for opportunities. Don't necessarily be scattered, obviously, but look at the world as a process, although life is a process, right? It's a journey, as they say. I remember that when I first started college, my brother wrote me a letter and he said something to the effect of, you're going to go into college and it's going to be hard and you're going to be focused, and everybody that goes into college does this, and you're going to focus on just getting through, get the grades, get to the end, get to whatever. But he said, make sure that you stop and think, this is a great time in my life. I'm learning something. I'm embracing what's around me, and you will actually have a much better college career. And he was right. And I think that's true about life in general. I think we have to look to what's in front of us with some kind of a plan, but be willing to change, adapt, and move forward in different directions, because we might find out that in the end, what we wanted is not nearly as good as what we got. Oh, by the way, I have a review to read. If you would like to review the show, if you haven't done so already, please do. If I see them pop up, I read them, and I'm going to do one now. This is from Chasempa via Apple Podcasts, Taiwan. I hope I'm saying that correctly. 5 stars. Can I do it with the speed light? Yes, you can. Excellent podcast. I've been following Daniel Norton for years through his YouTube channel and Adorama videos. I've learned a lot with his teaching while enjoying his sense of humor and expertise. I'm a Spanish director living in Spain, so due to the time difference, it's very difficult to catch his live shows. So this podcast is a great vehicle to interact with him and the community by leaving messages and asking or sharing things. Hope soon can become a video podcast, as Daniel wishes. Keep the good work. Vamos, Enrique. So it says Apple Podcast Taiwan, but they are in Spain. Thanks, Enrique. You know, I also got a couple of emails, really nice emails, thank you, that didn't seem appropriate to read. If you want to reach out to me, of course, my email is avoice@dnphoto.com. You can also check the show notes. There is a link to the Discord server down there. Join the Discord if that's your jam. I will say that, and again, I'm going to keep mentioning this because we have problems. I think a lot of people that I'm introducing to this aren't Discord people. If you're new to Discord, sign up for Discord first, wait a few days, then join. If you already tried to join and got bumped, please send me a message. I will get you in. There's a community growing over there. It's really fun. Lots of conversations happening in the photography rooms, the philosophy room, gear rooms, if you want to talk about that stuff. And of course, just general photography chat and general creator chat, I guess. Along with the Discord server down in the show notes, you'll find, again, all the ways to reach me. Please do rate and review the show if you haven't already. Share it with your friends. Try to get it in front of more people. And if you're so inclined, there is a link to my Patreon if you'd like to support the channel in that way. I'll talk to you soon. Quick note from editing Daniel. I fixed the deal with Spotify, so there is a video podcast on Spotify. And also, if you prefer the video, they're on YouTube now. I'll put a link to those as well.